There are a lot of different ways to play a game as open as Fallout 4. You can customize your character and equipment in an endless number of ways, roleplay to your heart's content, and even approach the game itself in a completely unique way. Some people will take a stealthy approach, silently picking off enemies while lurking in the shadows. Others will strategize and intricately plan everything they possibly can. Personally, I like to do something a little more straightforward, walking straight forward. Of course, in practice, I don't do this the entire time. Sometimes, in order to actually make progress, you have to stop holding the forward button and try something new. Or do you? Can you beat Fallout 4 by always moving forward? First things first, the rules. I must always hold the forward key, usually set to W on the keyboard. However, after a while, continually holding down a key would start to hurt, or I could accidentally let go. So we'll be using an alternate way to make sure it's always held down, but more on that later. The next rule is no strafing or going backwards. A true gamer does not concern themselves with such silly movement options, and I will be ignoring them. Additionally, I set some extra challenges for myself to complete along the way. Failing them will not fail the main challenge, but they will serve to make things more interesting and difficult. They are: melee only. Always pick the first dialogue option and mash through NPC yapping. I have no use for things like story in a role-playing game. My role is that of judge, jury, and executioner, and I will not let puny NPCs interrupt me for any longer than I have to. Kill Swan, the unique super mutant behemoth hiding near Park Street Station. One shot a tough enemy. One swing, one kill, that's all you should need, and I'm gonna prove it. Choose a good ending. Unlike Fallout New Vegas, this game has not one, but two morally good factions, so I'm gonna side with one if I can. Get perfectly preserved pie. You can get this from a porta diner, and it's up to skill whether or not you get it. Hit a grand slam. More on this one later. I'll be bringing these challenges up as they become relevant, and they influenced how I built my character, but they're mostly just side little things I thought would be fun for some extra points. Now, how exactly are we going to make sure forward is always held down to ensure maximum gaming power? Well, my first thought was to get a piece of software to do it for me, such as AutoHotkey or a macro. Sadly, I'm too stupid to know how they work, and too impatient to learn, so much like the challenge, we're going to take the direct route.
Nice approach!
So, with the setup complete, it's time to sit back, relax, and grab a can of limited edition US military Mellow Yellow, still expired of course, that we have in the back of the closet, because we'll need this energy for our walk. Step 1. Building the perfect character. I went with a chiseled, refined, manly build. Forged by the gods themselves, there could only be one name for such a titan. Chad. I also gave him the last name Kensington, which was probably a poor choice, because the character I named him after looks nothing like this peak of humanity, but the first choice is always the best one. So, always moving forward in the gameplay itself isn't actually the toughest part of this challenge. I didn't consider this when the idea was first suggested to me, but in hindsight it makes sense that while in menus, always having one of the keys held down will cause them to do this. I can move my mouse over a different option, but it will move faster than Nintendo's lawyers when a 6-year-old makes a drawing of their favorite video game character. Which means if I want to, or need to, pick anything in a menu that isn't the first option, which is 90% of the time, I'll have to find a way to press the button before the menu scrolls all the way up to the top. Is this funny? Yes, very much so. But it will also grow to be a huge headache as I have to figure out a way to control this, and then do it an untold number of times. What's even better is that any thought or consideration to choosing my stats is basically gone, because good luck timing this. And I pretty much have to get lucky in order to get a character even resembling the build that I want. In the end, this was as good as I cared to get it. 10 strength was the only thing I really cared about, because every point in strength is an extra boost to my only means of doing damage, as well as my carry weight. I fought with the menus to keep intelligence low and ended up putting a lot of points into charisma, which was undoubtedly a mistake. I tried draining them out, but the menu fought with me the entire time, so I just went with it. If you want to try this challenge at home, aim for a few target stats. Strength should be the most important for a melee character, but almost as important are agility, endurance, and luck, which just so happen to all be 3 or lower. But enough about the dumpster fire that is my stats. It's time to pretend to care about my son, and do my least favorite thing of all time. Wait. Luckily, I didn't have to do that for very long before the TV man informed me there are hot single warheads in my area looking to give me a lethal dose of radiation. I sprinted outside to meet one, somehow didn't die from this, and went to cosplay as. I watched my son get kidnapped and my wife get domed and woke up a very mad Chad. Right away, I found out that charging in headfirst actually has some downsides. When fighting smaller enemies, I don't really have a choice but to circle around them like a madman, desperately throwing punches until something lands. I looted the vault, accidentally picked up a gun I couldn't figure out how to unequip without the Pip-Boy, and used the Overseer's terminal to... So, as alluded to earlier, the menu frustration applies to terminals too, which means that using a terminal will always be a nightmare. So that's something to look forward to, but surely terminals won't come up that often. I spent 3 entire minutes trying to click this one button and realized what I had signed up for. Fortunately, I developed a little bit of a strategy. Using your mouse to hover over an icon will select it even while it's constantly moving up. So if I mash left click really close to a button, and then move the mouse over the option I want, I'll eventually get lucky enough to click at the right time. It's an ugly strategy, but it works. With the door open, I could make my way to the end, grab the Pip-Boy, and open the vault door. On my way out, I got another mashing minigame and rode to where the real game begins. Now it's time for step 2, quests. As I stepped outside, I got hit with a bunch of notifications I had never seen before, and assumed these must be the ones installed with the next-gen update, and realized I haven't played Fallout 4 since that dropped. I think that giving a bunch of quests right at the beginning of the game is a really clumsy way to handle this, but there's more important things to worry about, like saying hi to Codsworth. This is when I encountered yet another obstacle of the challenge. In previous Fallout games, entering dialogue would lock you in place and freeze time while you're talking. Normally this isn't of much consequence, but it would make dialogue nice and easy. In Fallout 4 though, you are afforded no such luxuries. Time doesn't stop, and neither do things in the world around you. Normally this is just useful for awesome Bethesda moments like something exploding near you for no reason while you talk, but it also has impractical applications, like making it possible to have conversations with multiple people at the same time, which I never even realized was a limitation of New Vegas and 3. Additionally, it means you can leave a conversation by simply walking away, and characters even sometimes have unique dialogue for this. In most cases though, it just forces the dialogue to restart, meaning I have to mash through it again. In order to prevent this from happening, we need to find a way to still let them talk without going too far. I can run circles around them, but this is basically impossible because the game will often lock your camera in place when it's your turn to talk. Instead, the far easier and more assertive course of action is to just get stuck on something while you talk. This can be a piece of furniture, rubble, dog, or the person you're talking to. It doesn't always work, and sometimes I get forced out of dialogue, but it means I can actually progress the quests. It took me a while to figure this out, so some of my early conversations looked like this. But with the basic strategy down, I could actually talk to Codsworth and get him to give me the MTV Cribs tour of Sanctuary. I punched some bugs, and was on my way to GameStop to be the first person to ever experience Concord. While there, I also reunited with my 2 best friends for this challenge. No, not the Minutemen. I wanted my trusty pal Dogmeat, a melee-only companion, and a baseball bat, a melee-only melee weapon. Together, we made a formidable team, and nothing in the wasteland could... Okay. Alright, attempt 2. Let's do this. Okay, better that time, but maybe if I use a little cover while I run up, they... Huh. Okay, new plan. Let's still go forward, but just in this direction this time around. The building will provide cover as I get in close enough to actually show them my Negan impression. For some reason when I did this, most of the raiders vanished by the time I was ready to fight. My best guess is that Preston asked them to go help a settlement, but I'm not complaining. That was when I discovered something amazing. Both the Pip-Boy and the level up screens are immune from constantly scrolling up, which is a huge relief. This means from this point forward I have full control over my character's perks, stats, and inventory. I put my first point into luck because I was going to abuse the hell out of these perks later down the line. For now though, I headed inside the Museum of Freedom, and died several times trying to get to Preston. Despite how awful my stats were, and how easy it was to kill me, the baseball bat was putting in work, and I made it through without much of a headache. The Minutemen informed me of some power armor, sitting all alone on a roof, looking for some company. I happily obliged, and went to get myself a fusion core. Welcome to the nightmare that is hacking while your cursor always does this. If you thought regular terminal menus was bad with up to 5 things to click on, let me introduce you to one with like 100, and you don't know which one's the right one. It took me 7 minutes to brute force this one terminal. I could have played like 3 Hands of Caravan in that time. I eventually got it though, and grabbed my reward. One of the many quirks of Fallout 4 is that the game kinda breaks if you do certain things out of order. For example, you're supposed to get the fusion core and then enter the power armor. But if you're wearing the power armor when you pick up the fusion core, the next step of the quest doesn't trigger. So I had to exit the power armor and re-enter it to get the quest to progress. No big deal, just another day playing a Bethesda game. I went to Rumble with the Raiders, which were a cakewalk, and then got clapped by the Deathclaw. I had to exit and re-enter the power armor again, but I phased through the wall and fell to my death. Don't ask me how. Third time's the charm. I updated the quest, handled the Raiders, lost some power armor pieces, and challenged the Deathclaw in hand-to-hand combat. Even a crit did barely anything, and I burned all of my healing items, but I, at level 2, killed one of the most ferocious enemies in the entire game with a baseball bat. Questionable game design choices aside, I was free to clean up the rest of the Raiders, and tried and failed to loot thanks to constantly walking past what I wanted to pick up. Before doing anything else, I brought my almost useless power armor back to Sanctuary and met up with Preston to bring him back too. I wanted to use the Euro Special Book to get to 11 strength, but I forgot to temporarily lose some strength to equip it, so I thought they patched it out. As far as I can tell, they didn't, and so I ended up wasting that extra point on Perception. Then I went on everyone's favorite journey, starting the settlement quests with the Minutemen. I stole some tomatoes to plant in Sanctuary and went to curb stomp some Raiders, and then I spent almost 2 hours trying and failing to finish this quest. Sure, the Raiders themselves caused me to die a lot and spend my precious few healing items, but the real killer was just trying to remember where to go in this stupid building. I've played through this quest at least 7 times, and every single time I get lost. It's a maze, and there's turrets and Raiders everywhere. Sure, maybe it's a skill issue, but I hate Corvega Assembly Plant. I hope I never have to come back here. It was then that I decided to cross something off my list of goals to make me feel better. I happened to stumble across a Porta Diner, and it only took about 6 minutes to get my first objective crossed off the list. For the next little while, I just grinded Minutemen quests. Go here, talk to a settler, wander over to kill whatever they tell me to, talk to the settler again, and then go back to Preston. Over and over again. Truly thrilling quest design worthy of Game of the Year. I was now level 8, and had a decent array of perks, and a much higher luck stat than at first. I would have kept riding the Minutemen quest train, but one of the places I got sent to, the National Guard Training Yard, required me to hack a terminal in order to get it open. There was probably a password hidden somewhere like 5 feet away, but I couldn't be bothered to find it, so I focused on other quests instead. I thought, I'll come back to it. I never did. I also tried to check out some of the Creation Club quests that the game forced into my quest screen, but quickly found out that none of them were very friendly to a low-level character, so they just sat and collected dust for the rest of the game, just like the last one. Instead of doing side quests to level up, I'm just gonna do the main quest, because it's gotta get done sooner or later. I stopped by Diamond City and completely ignored the Freedom Trail and just headed for the Railroad secret base. I put in their super secret password and paid a visit to the Triggermen. They were very easy to deal with, and the only real challenge was the terminal guarding Nick Valentine's prison cell. I ended up accidentally taking around 30 numbers to see the Overseer, and I managed to finally get what I came here for, the speech bobblehead. I also decided to let Nick come with me too, and I got an upgrade to my baseball bat. This one's blue. That's it, otherwise it's the exact same. Nick and I went back to his office, and I came up against what I thought could be the end of the run. A chair that you might find in the corner of a hotel room. One that the hotel gives for all the freaky little watchers out there. Normally you sit in this chair, and Nick asks you some questions about your time as a cosplayer in the vault. The quest has a specific stage making sure you sit in the chair. However, in Fallout 4, when you sit down, the way to stand back up is by pressing forward, which, need I remind you, is being held down. This means that when you do this, you immediately stand back up. So with bated breath, I took a seat, and sure enough stood up. But the quest updated anyway. Thank you, Todd. I'll definitely be buying Skyrim for the Dreamcast in celebration of your generosity. Just when I was silently pumping my fist, disaster struck. Nick forced me to describe the man who shot my wife, and for some reason repeating the first dialogue option at him over and over again isn't good enough. He forces you to choose multiple of the dialogue tree's options, and this means I have to take the L on one of the bonus challenges. I will still mostly be doing this challenge from this point onward for the fun of it, but it won't be worth any extra points. Anyway, we broke into Tony the Tiger's house and discovered the real reason he invented cornflakes. We also found his membership card for Andrew Bottom G Tate's super secret exclusive Discord server. With this knowledge, Dogmeat could track the specific color of his Bugatti across the wasteland. When I found him, he rambled on about how the CIA is responsible for him not being able to get a girlfriend, and that he has to fight against the Matrix by eating raw meat and complaining about women in video games. Unfortunately for him, I took my blue pills that morning, and his MLM recruitment had no effect. I grabbed what little existed of his brain after so many years spent on Twitter, and I brought it back to Nick. We walked through the Hall of Fame of every time he'd ever won an online argument, and I discovered the secret of the Institute. After that, I went to drop off some junk in Sanctuary when Marcy Long insulted me for literally no reason. I wasn't even trying to talk to her, so I stopped what I was doing and gave Sanctuary one less mouth to feed. After a pretty intense Minutemen quest, I added 2 more settlements to the cause that I never visited again, and then it was time to make my way through the glowing sea. I said hi to Virgin, who according to this diagram was nowhere near as cool as me, and then I remember the Grognak comic you get in Vault 88. I went there, waited for what felt like multiple real-world hours, and then told the truth about how I killed the Deathclaw earlier. I took my comic, saved a cat, and decided I was getting tired of helping people. I wanted to be a spy. So I called up my buddy Deacon, and we followed the worst secret code ever to say hi to this guy. I couldn't help myself and tried shoving him off the bridge, but when I tried, I went with him. 3 times. I gave up and let him live this time, and then Deacon and I went to play in the sewer. Inside, there was a cool secret hideout, but I couldn't get through without hacking. At this point, I realized it was just easier to click any words at the top row, and if none were the password, reset the terminal. I got pretty lucky, but inside were a bunch of synths that needed to be taught a lesson in chadliness. Deacon lied to make me sound cooler than I was, I backed him up, and I was welcomed into the railroad. My first mission was to save a synth with the help of Sir Topham Hatt over here, and I did it without a single bump in the road. Finally at level 17, I was ready to take on Mass Fusion. Not because I needed the MacGuffin from the end of the game, but because there's a super cool Funko Pop all the way at the top with my name on it. This would take me all the way to 11 strength, a huge boost. Meanwhile, on the other side of the tree, I'd push luck all the way up to 8, and taken a few key perks, including Critical Banker. This would enable me to store multiple critical hits at will, and when combined with other bonuses such as the Grognak comics, better criticals, and the bonuses I have to melee damage, I quickly became a killing machine. In theory, anyway. In practice, I was still dying to enemies like this absolute beefcake, but I'd eventually come out on top. Same goes for all the terminals I painstakingly mashed through. If I don't end up with carpal tunnel by the end of this, maybe I have 10 luck in real life. After much headache, I felt confident enough to start on step 3, picking a faction. I went to the Cambridge police station, and carried them through the ghoul invasion. Paladin Dance then invited me to loot all of their supplies and join him in ArcJet Systems. I did so, dreaming of my beautiful shiny new Brotherhood power armor, only to be stopped by a terminal I couldn't hack. And I didn't want to put any more points into intelligence because of Idiot Savant, and Nick, who can hack terminals for you, has a gun, which would violate the melee-only challenge if we got into combat. So I just left Dance down there, waiting for me to return. And I never saw him again. By this point in the game, the regular baseball bat was sort of like trying to hit someone with suspiciously limp Crazy Bread. Thankfully, I had the brilliant idea to add barbed wire. I tried it out on some Super Metroids who had someone's overly enthusiastic freshman English teacher as a hostage. I cleared out everything that moves, and the time has come to help the Minutemen secure the castle. And this was a mistake. I died so many times here. The little Mirelurks are impossible to hit, the big ones are total tanks, and the really big one can basically one-shot me. I resorted to drinking out of the sink and abusing quick saves while letting the essential Minutemen take care of the big one. Unfortunately, the Queen spawns infinite hatchlings while alive, and they would only attack me. Their onslaught was non-stop, but I found enough gaps in their attacks to try and help with the Queen. After conquering the castle, I wanted to continue rolling with the Minutemen quest. They are the most goody two-shoes faction in the entire Fallout franchise, and that would satisfy one of the side challenges. So I set off for Green Tech Genetics to skip the stupid tracking quest, and rolled up to the Courser's hiding spot. I bashed him to death, but accidentally hurt the synth inside, so I reset a save. Also, while looking through this footage, I realized that at some point before this I traded out my baseball bat for a super sledge, which basically tripled my damage output. After this I swapped to Team Fortress 2, and forgot to stop recording. During my time there, I learned how to make the only good engineer building, and made a perfect replica in Fallout 4.
Yeah, that's one fine-looking
Teleporter.
Why doesn't mine look like that?
I was then teleported to the Institute, where I faced two monumental challenges. The first was trying to load a holotape into the terminal to spy on the Institute. It was almost all the way at the bottom of the list, which is obviously not very friendly to a W warrior such as myself. After trying and failing miserably to insert it, I was met with a genius idea. I won't have to fight against holotapes clogging my inventory if they're not in my inventory. I threw every holotape I could onto the floor. Unfortunately, Fallout 4 does not allow you to drop holotapes it considers important to quests. 99% of the time, this is a completely valid and probably good restriction on player freedom. If something happens to those holotapes, it would lock you out of quests forever. But it means I was forced to yet again mash through the menu. I'm sure if a true mash master tried this challenge, they would find this easy. But I am pitifully bad at mashing, and I don't want to break my thumbs off today. So I just kept trying the old way and eventually got it. Now that I was in the Institute, it was time to face the second biggest roadblock of the entire challenge. Not killing my son the instant I met him. Instead, I wandered around the Institute and said hello to all my future victims. I have no intention of siding with them, and I instead milked them for as much XP as possible. Then, after enough time had passed since taking the castle, the next major Minutemen quest arrived, breaking into the weapons cache. This was pretty easy. Clear some rubble, trigger some landmines, and do some John Henry roleplay by beating a machine to death with nothing but a hammer. However, I made a crucial mistake. I forgot about the artillery. In order to finish the game with the Minutemen, you were required to build and then test fire a piece of artillery that is supposed to help you defend settlements. But I don't care about that, because artillery is not a melee weapon. However, I'm not the one firing it, so it should be okay, right? Well, you have to throw a smoke grenade in order to get it to fire, and last I checked, grenades were usually not a melee weapon. So, was this it for the Minutemen questline?
Man, I spent hours of my life stomping
Mirelurk hatchlings.
A few important things to note about the smoke grenades is that they don't do explosive damage. However, they do inflict impact damage, exactly 1 point of it. In previous Fallout games, there were weapons you could throw at enemies, and those weapons dealt melee damage, even if they weren't exactly what we would consider a melee weapon. I was going to use a fancy definition from a dictionary to see if there was any wiggle room in there, but as it turns out, there isn't one. In fact, it seems like the term melee being used to describe handheld weapons is almost exclusive to games. Come to find out, the only reason we call melee weapons by that name is because that's what the Prussian army called close quarters combat in their war games. H.G. Wells, yes that one, used the same term in his rulebook for Little Wars, which laid the foundation for most modern tabletop games. Over time, melee was used to describe the type of weapons used in close quarters combat to help distinguish weapon and damage types in RPGs like Dungeons & Dragons. Once that happened, it basically became the default term in video games, and has become so ingrained in its terminology I just assumed that it was more widespread than it actually is. But you might be asking yourself, what does this have to do with a Fallout challenge run? Well, all this means that the definition isn't really set in stone. After all, if a throwing weapon can be classified as a melee weapon, why can't a signal grenade if it hits something when thrown? It only does 1 damage, and that's the only way it does damage. And so a new theorem was born, the hyena theorem, named after the very wise hyena who coined it. If you hit yourself with a projectile, it's illegally a melee weapon. So I threw it up into the air and hit myself with it, which means it, according to the hyena theorem, is a melee attack. The artillery shot where it landed, and I could actually finish the quest. Unfortunately, mathematicians and philosophers have not yet come to a consensus on the hyena theorem, so it's probably not wise to rely on it in case someone publishes a paper in a major respected journal next week called Top 10 Reasons Why Hitting Yourself in the Head with a Grenade is Stupid. So I didn't finish the Minutemen quest, and would only resort to this cop-out if it is my only choice. I reloaded a save and created an alternate timeline. In this universe, I didn't throw the grenade, and instead moved on to step 4, screw the Minutemen. They were no longer an option, so let's go through the other 3 possibilities. The Brotherhood of Steel is out of the question because Dance is still stuck in the basement, and I can't bear the thought of looking him in the eyes after being gone for several weeks. Also, the Brotherhood have some opinions of super mutants, synths, and ghouls that would get you banned from all but the stinkiest of social media platforms. so no matter how cool their power armor is, they cannot be classified as a good ending for the purposes of our side quest. Next is the Institute, which we will not be picking because I hate my son. Luckily, there's one last choice. The Railroad. They're everything a Chad like myself could possibly ask for. Cool name, awesome hideout, covert operations inspired by real-world history, and a plan to actively revolt against slavery with the help of synths. Plus, all a train does is hold W in a straight line and deal a lot of melee damage if you get too close, so really, we're kindred spirits. I wanted in, and I was instructed to work with the Institute. Cool. The Railroad questline is basically the exact same as the Institute one, but with 2 extra railroad-themed objectives slapped on near the end, where you betray the Institute at the last moment. I set out to find a way on the inside, and that involved putting a holotape into an Institute computer. Again. I did so, and then found out I had to also read a reply. This took me 18 real minutes. I almost gave up, I really did. I almost swallowed my pride and just moved to a different questline. And to make matters even worse, the reason I had to select this option instead of the top one is because Desdemona insisted that I be given a guide on how to use the holotape, which is the click of a button. If Desdemona didn't force Tom to put an instruction guide for how to click a button, I wouldn't have lost out on 18 entire minutes of my life. I could have watched like 3 whole episodes of Bluey in that time. But fine, it's over, right? Nope. I had to put the information on a different computer, which took so long I eventually had to leave for work before I got it done. When I got home, I showed Desdemona what I thought of her stupid guide, realized that was a bad idea, and created another new timeline. In this one, I conquered the computer, did the stupid Cambridge Polymer Labs quest, which involves more mashing, and began working as the Railroad's man inside the Institute. I also grabbed Virgin Serum for the first time literally ever, because a real Chad always helps those in need. I then did several repeatable quests before realizing they were repeatable, and went on a killing spree. We're close to the endgame now, but I still have a lot of work ahead of me. Such work needs a special kind of weapon to accomplish. I put 2 entire levels into a crafting perk, which is something I have never once done, and then upgraded my super sledge into the weapon that would carry me to the finish line. The heated super sledge. This bad boy makes the rest of the game easy, by comparison. I continued lying to my son, saying I might come home one day, and then remembered that at some point hours ago, I managed to kill a Brotherhood knight that was hostile to me for some reason. But the thought never occurred to me to take this armor and put it on a power armor shell. So I did just that, and ran to ruin my son's plans at Bunker Hill. I walked away with 1 more fusion core than I started with, and decided to just spend the rest of the game in it. While armored up, I was basically unstoppable, and I mean it for real this time. I don't think I died a single time for the rest of the game. I had such strong armor, such insane damage output, and so many irradiated pieces of food to stuff in my mouth that no enemy on God's green flat earth stood a chance against me. In fact, look what I can do to Swan. That's another challenge done, by the way. I saw another Portadiner and dreamed up a future video where I learned to speedrun getting a piece of pie from all 18 of them. It would be hell on earth, and entirely pointless. So if you want to see that, remember to like and subscribe to pressure me to make it. I pushed my son off the roof, replaced him with the body of a dead raider who was a better son to me than he ever was, became the new director of the Institute, and went to mass fusion again to lick the demon core. By the way, there are some flashing lights ahead, so if you're sensitive to that kind of thing, skip to the timecode on screen. After collecting it, a sentry bot became the victim I've been looking for. I used a crit and killed it in 1 shot, which means I have gloriously finished another challenge. I also killed every member of the Brotherhood in sight, and in return, they attacked the Railroad HQ. I dealt with it easily, and the time had come to teach the Brotherhood how a real W Chad uses power armor. I drank an entire bottle of whiskey and got swinging. The Brotherhood members only served as vending machines for Stimpaks, XP, and fusion cores. The fight inside the Pridwin felt like an immersive VR recreation of that one NFT rave that gave people eye damage. Every time they got a few hits in, I took a quick snack break. Anytime they broke a piece of armor, I'd replace it with one from a fallen comrade. The only ones who didn't face my wrath were the children. Thankfully, they were saved from a swift end via blunt force trauma, and instead died in the explosion. Obviously much more moral and decent. I didn't get a good view of said explosion because I wasn't driving, however. After all, I just downed an entire bottle of whiskey, and I was not about to drink and drive.
Driving in my car right after a beer. Hey, that bomb is shaped like a deer.
And now the time has come. The last quest is available. I can destroy the Institute at any moment. But a quick glance at the bonus challenge board shows we still have one thing left to do. I needed to hit a Grand Slam. This is accomplished by randomly getting lucky while having the 4th tier in the Big Leagues perk. This perk has been hard carrying me for basically the entire game. Every upgrade adds a huge bonus to my melee damage, and the later levels can cause you to disarm opponents and even knock their head clean off in one shot, which is referred to as a Grand Slam. But you have to be level 42 in order to fully upgrade the perk, and I was only level 33, despite being basically done with the entire game and the quest line for 3 entire factions and a bunch of side quests. So it's time for step 5, the grind. I scrapped every single thing in Sanctuary made out of wood or metal, and made my first ever recreation of the world of fences in all of its glory. It brought me up to level 36. But pro tip, if you're ever thinking about taking the 3rd level of Idiot Savant, don't. The first 2 levels are quite possibly the best perks in the entire game, with how easy it is to farm XP, but the 3rd one throws that out the window. While creating the world of fences, I went from Idiot Savant triggering so often the perk animation had to play catch up, to it barely triggering at all. After some research, I found out that it forces a 60-second cooldown between the perk activating, because it triggers a state where you get triple XP on all kills. Good on paper, but you can quickly see why this is horrible. It means you can't get quintuple XP for 60 entire seconds, and you only get triple on exclusively kills. So if you're, say, farming XP by exploiting the settlement building mechanics, that's 60 entire seconds of fence posts you put down that just don't get the chance at Idiot Savant. This applies to every method of earning XP too, completing quests, charisma checks, lockpicking, hacking, anything. This is a terrible trade-off for basically anything except going on a rampage, and even then, it's not guaranteed triple XP, you still have to trigger it for the perk to work. Terrible upgrade. So I sadly lost out on a ton of XP from taking it, and had to make up for it by running around and doing quests. I tried doing some more of the next gen update quests, gave up the second I encountered a terminal, helped out some settlements, and then got bored. So I went to do my favorite side quest in the entire game, the last flight of the USS Constitution. And wouldn't you know it, more mashing. But even better, I had to go to Corvega Assembly Plant again. Yay! This time I didn't get lost for nearly as long, and I sent the robots on their voyage. I was getting closer to my goal, but I was also running out of quests. I then hit up the only Fallout 4 DLC I've ever touched, and I still don't know the name. It's the one with Vault 88. I did the beginning few quests and had a moderate amount of fun along the way before being a few raider kills away from level 42. I took the last level of the Big Leagues perk and hit a Grand Slam pretty much right away. And with every last objective complete besides closing out on the railroad ending and the melee only challenge, it was time for step 6, Operation Make Institute Leave Forever. The plan was simple. Using our level 3 teleporter, coordinate the all too rare red team pub push through the Institute, killing anyone not willing to side with us, which of course included my own son. Ironically enough, Big Leagues triggered, which means he got to play ball with his old man for the first and last time on his way out. I waltzed through the Institute's laughable defenses, got a new, better son, and beat Fallout 4 while always moving forward. Looking back on the run, I'm pretty pleased with how it went. I hadn't played Fallout 4 in about 2 years, but I found it just as fun despite the restrictions, which pretty drastically changed how I play the game. I'm a little ticked off that I was forced to fail one of the side challenges, but at least I succeeded with the rest. I might even give this a try in other games someday. It seems like a pretty entertaining and enjoyable gimmick. But that's all I have for you today. Thank you for making it this far into the video. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you want to see more content like this, including potentially the aforementioned Portadiner run. I'm always open to suggestions for how to ruin a great game, or even not so great games, and let me know if there's anything you'd like to see me try. Or you can leave a comment letting me know your favorite Grand Slam order at Denny's, and I'll give your comment a heart. In the meantime, take care, and bye for now.